What up guys, Toko here giving you a tutorial on the Siege of Orgrimmar. Now, I don't think this is too difficult, but I have found a couple tanks that still don't understand what they're doing, as well as there are some other roles that haven't quite figured it out. So I'm just going to try and cover all the roles, although mostly this is going to be from a tank's perspective and what a tank needs to do in order to accomplish their goals. So we're starting off on the first boss, and I would suggest kind of standing where I am, kind of in the corner, because he's going to lay down these puddles that you can see that I'm not very good at getting out of. In an LFR, it's not that important to get out of them immediately, but whenever you start getting into flex and regular heroic, it's really important to get out of them as soon as possible. And these will spawn under every single character, so you need to really get moving whenever those show up. As well as you saw me get launched in the air, and if you pay attention, you can see these little circles floating around, and those are markers for where the next it's kind of like a gust of wind is going to pick up. Again, in LFR, you really don't have to get out of there, but as you get higher in the difficulties, you really need to move. Um, so tanks for this fight, we really only need to look at his corrosive splash or shot. I don't quite remember. He only casts it, maybe every 20, 30 seconds. But whenever it is used, you need to taunt off immediately. Again, LFR, you can wait for 2 stacks, but it's optimal at 1. And as it gets higher, you really need to taunt off that first stack. And by the time he uses it on the other tank, you're fine. Other than that, for this fight, there isn't a whole lot of mechanics that you have to worry about with the boss. The harder part is whenever he summons those ooze that we just fought and you saw in the very beginning. Now there are two kinds of ooze. There is the kind of black looking ooze, and that needs to be DPS'd as quickly as possible. And then there is the light blue ooze, which needs to be healed by all the healers. And if you can do this, there is sort of a kind of energy, kind of rage bar underneath the boss's health. That'll go down with the more ooze that you kill or heal to full. So the optimal way of doing this is getting everyone um, to do their part. Now, as you can see there, I died, and that was because I wasn't getting the off tank wasn't taunting off during that corrosive blast, which caused me to die, as well as healers were kind of off in the back more, and really wasn't helping. Um, and so really, that's the entire fight. As you can kind of see, as the boss is down, everyone's kind of standing on the platform spread out, and that allows you to get all of the ads that are going to be spawned. And you try and spread out your healers, not so far away from the tanks, but at least where you can heal the back DPS if needed, as well as hit those light blues whenever they spawn. And you're not going to hit all of the light blue, but if you can, get that little bit in, it helps. And as we just saw, his swirl attack, I've seen many conflicting ideas. Some people say run around the boss, other people uh, don't even see it. To me, it's best to run into that attack because then you won't get hit by it twice. Because I've seen people get hit by it the first time while they're trying to run, and then it'll come by and hit them twice, and can kill you if you're not being careful. So I would advise just running into it and taking that damage. And even in the in flex raid, it's best to run into there. As you can see, I'm kind of using some bandages. There really aren't any black ooze around me, and I'm trying to stay at home. Uh, Tanks are best put where I am in the entryway to the left, and then the tank on the other side. You can see there the orange circle uh, placed there. And so that's pretty much the entire fight. It's a super easy fight. Uh, you know, should be a one shot in regular. I know my group had no problem doing it in flex. I think we were maybe one person short. I'm not entirely sure the size we were doing, but it wasn't. It was real easy. So that's pretty much the entire fight. You just rinse and repeat until the boss is finally downed. So, little recap. Tanks, watch for that corrosive blast. Healers, make sure you get on those light blues. And DPS, try not stacking those little Shaw circles on the tank, and killing the black ooze whenever you can before it gets there. As well, those black ooze can be stunned and hamstringed or movement impaired, and so that's really useful to know whenever you're going through here. So that's about it for the first boss. So I suppose let's kind of finish this up and move over to the Fallen Protectors. Alright guys, so the Fallen Protectors. You have Rook, He, and Sun. Now each boss needs to be taken down by 33% each time, and then killed at the same time, or else they will heal up to like 15-20%. So we're going to have one boss on Rook and one boss on He. Now it's preferred to keep them separated, but I'm not entirely sure that it's required at all. Um, but whenever you're tanking Rook, you need to keep him faced away from the raid. That way he doesn't use his vengeful strikes and stun everyone. For He, you need to watch his gouge attack, and whenever you see him start using that, you need to turn around so you don't get stunned. If the other tank does not turn around, the Rook tank needs to taunt He, and it'll not cause the boss to pretty much wipe the entire raid. So at 33%, each boss has their own special ads. I'm sorry about that pop up. I'm not. I don't know what happened there. Um, but each boss spawns their own stuff. And Rook summons misery, sorrow, and gloom. Now, misery needs to be kept away from the entire raid. Misery lays down a patch of Shaw touched earth and will just do massive amounts of damage to everyone there. Misery, I believe, or not misery, gloom will just cast on people, and so one of the tanks needs to get a hold of him, and then gloom just needs to be tanked. It's best to kind of put misery and gloom together, and then have the he tank take on Sorrow. Um, Whenever he does his little special move, he will summon uh, like some Mark of Anguish or something like that. They put Mark of Anguish on someone. That needs to be put on one of the tanks. Whenever you get into the higher levels, it's best to alternate tanks. But in Flex, if you have a tank that knows what he's doing, he can soak up all the damage. And as you can see here, this is a Sun special move, if you want to call it that. And she just makes a bubble that everyone needs to stand in and DPS those mobs down. Um, and, tanks should be in there, but you want to make sure you face the bosses away, especially if you're Rook. Um, a couple seconds ago, whenever I was walking up, I didn't realize how close Rook's timer was going for Vengeful Strikes, and he ended up stunning the group. Now, in a regular, that probably could have caused a wipe, and so you really need to be aware of your boss's moves. Otherwise, you just rinse and repeat every 33%. DPS, you really need to pay attention to the boss's health, as well as this circle that you can see I'm following this guy in. He's running away. You don't want to run away from people whenever you have that on there. It's one of those moves that it it's it's displaced amongst people when used. And so the more people you can get in that circle, the less damage you take. And that's really, really important, especially, whenever you have a DPS like that doesn't know and is actually doing pretty high on the chart. Don't run away from people whenever that happens. So that's pretty much the entire fight. There's nothing real special for healers, unless he's mobs use their Mark of Anguish on you, and then you need to use your special button, click tanks, and that's for everyone other than tanks. Obviously, if a tank somehow got marked, he wouldn't need to toss that on someone else. He's okay for that. So that's really the entire fight. It's not too difficult, but if you don't take down those mobs over the boss, it gets really hard, as well as you need to kill all three bosses within, I think, 10 seconds of each other. Because if you don't, they heal up to 15%. But that's really it. So no real stacks to worry about, no boss switching, just a clean and easy fight. So I will finish up this fight real quick, and then we can move on to the next one. Alright, so for the third boss, I'm not even going to try and pronounce his name. But it's a giant Shaw that everyone must fight in this circle. Um, In LFR, it's really, really easy because you don't have to worry about the golden orbs to decide who goes in and loses all their debuff. You just get randomly chosen. And what I mean by this is in the middle of my screen, you can see the encounter bar. And this is a debuff that you will get throughout the fight from various things. But there is an encounter, if you will, that you will be randomly put into that will allow you to bring that debuff to 0. Whenever that debuff is at 0, you will deal a ton more damage. So in this encounter, uh, for DPS, you will have to fight 4 of the tiny Sha that you see kind of floating there, casting at the boss, and uh, one of the bigger Sha. Um, Whenever you kill everything and all the moves can be dodged, um, you will come out of there with uh, pretty much a pure body, and you will deal massive amounts of damage to the boss. As well, the tanks have their own little scenario. For tanks, you will switch off randomly um, every other, and in this scenario, you must survive for a minute, I believe. After you survive for a minute, uh, you'll be pure. And this is the tanks one. He has a Titanic slam that he just did, and you want to avoid that if at all possible. And in here you have no healers. So you need to manage your cooldowns and everything as well as you can. But it's only a minute, and so it's not too difficult. Be sure to interrupt what you can so you don't get uh, any extra debuff on you. Um, the tank that is outside needs to tank the boss as well as tank the larger Sha. Now, whenever you kill the larger Sha, you need to walk over their bodies and absorb uh, kind of their essence. Um, and this will allow the DPS to stay fully buffed because as a tank, you're not going to be topping the charts. Um, and I believe it puts you through at least an LFR quicker into that scenario. Now you can absorb 4 large Sha at a time uh, before it's not good to absorb anymore. Um, there's also that skull in the background that you can see that walks around. You want to, you don't need to stay on the opposite side of it, but whenever it gets close to you, move away from it so it doesn't kill you. Uh, the first time I went through, I didn't know about it and just got instantly killed because it spawned just like it did a moment ago, where see it's really close, and I didn't notice it, but it's going the other way, and you can kind of see the head jumping towards that direction. And so if it's going the other way, no sense in spinning the boss around because it's nowhere close to you. Um, but that's the fight. That is the entire fight. Tanks absorb big Sha. DPS kill the small Sha out here, as well as the big ones whenever you see them pop up. And healers do your job. That's that's about it. It's a super easy fight in LFR. In Flex, it's not much more difficult, except for there are these golden orbs that you manually have to go pick up in order to get those encounters to lower your damage. And in Flex, tanks just switch off um, get 4 stacks, or absorb 4 essence, whatever you want to call it, and then pick up an orb. It's nothing difficult. Um, so uh, I'll just kind of let you guys watch through the rest of this fight, because that's the entire fight. Nothing more I want to say on it. And I will start back up at the end for the final fight. Last but not least, we have the Shah of Pride. Now, this is by far my favorite boss in LFR, because as a tank, if you're the one that has to handle the boss, you have to do nothing, at least in LFR. In LFR, there's no debuffs to watch for, and so you get to sit here the entire time and do nothing. So I'm not really going to focus on that this tank so much. Now, if you are the off tank in LFR, you need to go over to the green arrow, as you can see in the background, and tank the ads that are spawned whenever the Shah of Pride does reflection. It's really important, obviously, because the other DPS can't handle that damage. As well as you need to be close by, because these prisons here need to be unlocked. After a reflection, expect in the next couple seconds for there to be an imprisonment. And 3 random people, 2 DPS and a healer normally, will be imprisoned. If you are the tank for the Shah of Pride, as you saw, I just kind of went back a couple feet and stood on that button. Don't go to the back one, because you will lose aggro, and he will go and attack one of the closer melee. So you just go to the closest one, and don't go ahead of time, because it'll give you 5 pride as well as knock you away. Now, the pride has different levels of um, kind of consequence. The higher pride you have, the more difficult things become. So up until, I believe, 25 pride, you really have nothing to worry about. Once you hit 25 pride, you will get a swirling circle under you. Now, if you are the DPS, you need to, whenever he's about to, I think it's during reflection, it might be called something else. Whenever he's about to activate his pride move, you need to scatter out. Let those purple circles drop, run back in. Really simple. Whenever you get to 50 pride, I believe, it will put a small pride circle that only you can see. It'll have a little arrow above it, and you need to run over there and stand on it till it explodes, and you save the raid. If you don't, it'll deal massive amounts of damage to everyone around it. I don't recall what he does at 75. I believe you just kind of AoE around people. But at 100 pride, you get mind controlled. So 100 you don't want to ever see. Having said that, there are random people that will be selected with the Gift of the Titans. Those people do not receive any pride for anything. And so there's a mob that spawns in the back at a random time, and you need to get hit by that. You need to be the closest person whenever he dies. Um, Other than that, I think that's about it. It's just a pride management. Tanks really don't have to do anything except for pick up those reflection mobs. Um, but in flex and regular, there's a debuff that you need to taunt off at. So there you guys go. That is all of the Siege of Orgrimmar down in 25 minutes. So I hope this was really helpful. Comment if you need anything else, and I'll see you guys next time.